Welcome back to the Shop Build series. If you've seen the price of building material lately, you know that stuff isn't cheap. And sometimes you can save a few bucks by doing it yourself. You can make baseboards and moldings out of just about anything if you're willing to put in the effort. So in this video, we're going to try a few different ways to do the baseboards and moldings in the new shop, find out what's worth the effort and what's not. First, we're going to try a more traditional method using 2x4s. We're going to trim off one side to create a square edge and resaw these down the middle to give us some pieces for our 3/4 molding. I'll start with the test piece, cutting halfway through and flipping it, making small adjustments until my blade marks line up perfectly and I know I'm centered. For resawing on the table saw, I like to use a thin curved blade and make multiple passes. In this case, I'm using a construction blade from a circular saw, simply because I don't need perfect cuts since I'll be thickness planing them anyway. And this saves a little wear and tear on one of my nicer 10-inch table saw blades. Next, I'll run the boards through the planer. This will ensure that they are all the same thickness so I can get a nice, flush, smooth finish when I attach them to the wall. There are a wide range of profiles used for baseboards and molding. To keep things simple, I'm just going with a chamfer similar to what I used in the window casing video. That's all the heavy lifting for making molding out of 2x4s. At this point, these boards are pretty much ready for a quick sanding and paint. Let's make our next set of baseboards out of drywall. We'll put them up and compare them at the end of the video, along with a few other materials and methods. I'll set up an edge guide on the router to cut long strips off of a sheet of drywall. Dust collection is a big factor whenever you're cutting drywall with power tools, so I've got the router hooked up to a shop vac. I'm using a spiral cutting bit here, just like you'd use when cutting holes for outlet boxes. Now, as you can see, this does take some time, but when you compare how much a strip of drywall molding costs that you made yourself to buying manufactured molding, it may be something worth considering. I'll hit the edge with a flat sanding block and a drywall rasp on the corner just to take down any high spots. And yes, this has to be done on both rough edges and all four corners. I'll route the chamfer just like I did on the solid wood boards. You can see that even though the shop vac is on, a lot of dust escapes with this operation on drywall. I'm using ultralight drywall simply because it's the cheapest option and the most available in my area, but it's also the most porous. It's pretty easy to see all the holes and dimples in the drywall, and paint isn't going to fix that. So we've got to sand the chamfer and fill the edges with some fast drying mud. If you've been watching the Shop Build series, you've heard me talk about Easy Sand 90 before. That's what we're going to use to fill the holes on the edge of our baseboards. Mix up a little bit with water, slap it on with a putty knife, get it as smooth as possible, and finish it up with a little bit of sanding before we move to paint. After painting, I'll caulk the backside before I put it on the wall and brad nail it in place. The drywall I'm using is ultralight so it doesn't hold the nail as well as the heavy stuff, and the caulk will provide a stronger bond to the wall. The caulk also comes in handy for holding pieces in place while nailing. A nice thing about using drywall is it's easy to cut precisely enough with a knife instead of having to take every piece back and forth to the saw. After the pieces are in place, I'll caulk the seams and smooth them out. Then fill the nail holes and smooth out any sections where the boards are pieced together. I waited a day for everything to dry, then came back and sanded everything smooth for one last coat of paint. I don't know if you spotted it in the video or not, but there was some thought that went into what molding material went in what part of the room. For instance, door frames, window casings, and other high traffic areas were framed with the more durable of the materials. The baseboards and moldings attached to the walls were where I used the less durable materials because they're mostly just for looks. So this brings us to our comparison. Let's throw 2x4s and drywall in a chart since we're familiar with those, and we'll add MDF, whitewood/pine/fir boards, depending on where you're located and how they label it, particle board, and OSB, just to cover our bases. And we're going to leave out any of the more expensive hardwoods because this video is about being cheap and they don't really apply here. So let's break down the steps to use these materials and then we'll look at the prices. So for a 2x4, we need to rip it to size and optional planing depending on how well you ripped it to size. We need to route the profile and do some sanding. And anything we make ourselves, we're going to have to paint. For drywall, we have to rip it to size, sand it, clean it up, route the profile, mud it, sand it again. And this is the only material we're going to caulk to the wall simply because it doesn't hold the nail as well as the others, so it needs a little help staying put. Using a full sheet of MDF, you have to rip it to size and route the profile. You likely don't even need to sand it before painting. If you get MDF boards that are already the correct size, all you have to do is route the profile. Sort of the same for whitewood, pine, fir. You likely just need to route the profile, but you may need to do a little sanding depending on the conditions it was stored in. If you use a sheet of particle board, you gotta rip it to size, route the profile, mud, and sand it. And just like the correct size MDF board, a correct size particle board saves you a step, but you still need to route, mud, and sand. And OSB, even though we put it on the list, won't make very good baseboards or molding unless you're really into the OSB pattern. Now let's take a look at what you can buy straight off the shelf pre-finished, usually with a primer. So all you have to do is paint. Also, you can get some different routed profiles. However, you may not be able to get the ones that you want. The chamfer that I put on all of this molding is not something that I could buy locally. Here's our price chart based upon current market values. As prices fluctuate, this will change a little bit. As a common denominator for molding, I'm using 3 1/4 by half, since it's the only size I could find in every material on our list, and from there I've calculated cents per foot. So let's start where we left off. Paying for pristine, primed, precision, planed, and profiled planks as you'd assume cost a premium. I couldn't resist that one. With surfaced whitewood at the most expensive, 88 cents per foot, keep in mind that's bare wood, no primer. Next is prime whitewood, usually finger jointed, and that's about 80 cents per foot. PVC is likely the most durable of all the options we're going to talk about, and that's 64 cents per foot. And the most popular choice is a good middle ground, and that's primed MDF at 53 cents per foot. Next are the DIY options. MDF sheets you cut yourself will run you about 43 cents per foot. Honestly, not much cost savings over the primed MDF. 2x4s jump you down to 29 cents per foot. That's almost 3 times less than the primed whitewood that you'd compare it to. Plywood is about the same at 28 cents per foot. And OSB, which is irrelevant to our model, but I priced it anyway, is about 21 cents per foot. Particle board comes in at about 19 cents per foot. And finally, the cheapest option is drywall at a super budget-friendly 11 cents per foot. You may have noticed the theme here. More work seems to equal more cost savings in pretty much every case. So visually, there's not that much of a difference. Other than wood grain that could actually be sanded out on this one, I couldn't tell the difference if they were both on the wall. And I'm the one who made them. The other thing I thought about was possible water damage, how that might affect drywall differently than any of the other materials. And my air conditioner actually flooded one of the walls in the shop that had the drywall baseboards, and I'm happy to say it didn't affect it at all. Didn't hurt anything. Had water sitting there for a couple days before I cleaned everything up. No issues. So I was kind of impressed with that. If you've watched my videos for any amount of time, you know that I like finding stuff, broken stuff, cheap stuff. I like getting the most bang for my buck. And sometimes a little bit of work is an even trade for that. In this situation, you'll have to judge for yourself, but I thought the comparison would be pretty interesting. And for those of you who are like me and just want to know the cost to effort ratio, hopefully this helped you out a little bit. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and if you know any inside information about baseboards and moldings, put it in the comments because I want to know about it. But until the next video, you guys have a good one.